Michael tightened the last of the laces on his hiking backpack. He stepped back, admiring how neatly he had packed the backpack. Every year, he and his friends went on a 3-day hike in the mountains, and this year, he couldn't wait for this moment. The fresh air, peaceful sunrises, and morning dew always brought Michael a sense of calm. It was his temporary escape from reality, endless lectures, and grueling exams. "This is it," Michael muttered, throwing his backpack behind his back. Early the next morning, Michael and the rest of the expedition met at the main train station. "Mom, you still haven't bought a new backpack. Your back will thank you," Megan teased. "Am I the last one?" Michael ignored Megan's question. William, Con, Trinity, and Michael had known each other since middle school. They were all college students now, but the tradition of the annual trip remained. This year, the group traveled to the mountains, first by train, and then only on foot from the station. "Next time you'll be pulling up a tarp." Khan muttered grumpily as the group pulled up to the shelter where they planned to spend the night. William wasn't much of a talker, but when it came to complaining, he was, as Megan would say, never quiet. Sometimes Michael wondered why he even went camping with them every year and continued to annoy the whole group with his sullen remarks. They found themselves at the boardwalk structure, where hikers usually took a break and continued their hike. The sun was slowly sinking below the horizon. Trinity and Michael were just spreading out the tarp under the canopy when they heard Megan's startled scream. "What are you screaming about?" said Trinity. Megan stood, stunned. I think I saw someone," she muttered, raising her index finger toward the dense forest. Trinity rolled her eyes. She collapsed onto the tarp and looked at her cell phone screen. "Maybe it was a leprechaun," William remarked, laughing at her joke. "No signal," Trinity sighed, tucking her phone away in her backpack and climbing into her sleeping bag. "Come on, go to bed." "Trinity's already laid down," Michael said. Megan was still looking between the spruce trees, as if expecting something to appear out of the darkness at any moment. The nightmares had been plaguing Michael for a long time, so he hadn't slept much. It was cold, too, and the fog was swirling around the makeshift camp. Michael stretched and clumsily climbed out of his sleeping bag. Megan's sleeping bag was empty, and the rest of the expedition was still asleep. He pulled a bun out of his backpack, spread some melted cheese on it, and sat down on a bench under the canopy. A few minutes later, Ken woke up and sat down next to Michael. "Where's Megan?" asked Ken, absent-mindedly. "She probably went to the lake." "I don't know." Michael waved his hands. When Trinity stood up, the group got nervous. "Hey, come on. Try calling her," Ken coaxed Trinity. "How can I do that if there's no signal?" Genius. They waited another hour. Megan still wasn't there. "Maybe we should go to the police," Trinity finally suggested. None of the boys had a better idea, so they packed up camp and headed back to town. The omnipresent fog shrouded the area so that you could barely distinguish a step. Everyone was silent. They pondered what might have happened to Megan, and scenarios of varying degrees of plausibility formed in their heads. "Shit." Ken broke the silence, slumping down on the wooden bench. "I don't believe it." Trinity exhaled. They found themselves at the wooden structure the group had used as shelter from the weather the previous night. "My God, we're back where we came from," Michael said aloud, what everyone had realized by then. We'll never make it to the police station like this. Let's line up and search the woods around us, Trinity decided. They took off their backpacks, leaving only their flashlights behind, and soon after dark, they set off deep into the woods. Megan woke up. Her head was pounding. Her eyes were spinning in circles, and she felt nauseous. She found herself lying on the floor in a semi-dark hallway. There was only one flashlight hanging on the concrete wall, giving Megan an idea of where she was. The basement, the dampness, and the rats in the corner of the room told her where she was. Tears came to her eyes, and she wanted to scream, but the rag clamped over her mouth prevented it. She tried to stand up, but the ropes on her legs and arms prevented her from doing so. It was just a nightmare. Nothing more. Megan tried to convince herself. Panic clouded her thoughts. Her heart was beating fast and loud. She screamed through the gag, desperate to call for help. But her cries were soon interrupted by a voice barely audible, unnatural, with an almost childlike intonation. Goosebumps ran down her back. "I'm going to make you beautiful." A figure appeared in front of Megan. She was medium height, with messy brown hair, dressed in a gray hooded sweatshirt and jeans. A white porcelain mask adorned with plump red lips and painted cheeks gave the disturbing impression that it was a man or a woman. The man's eyes were not visible. Megan tried in vain to see the pupils, but saw only endless darkness. She watched Megan, admiring her like a work of art, while the girl struggled desperately with the ropes. He took a pair of scissors from the small tool table, waved them lazily in the air a couple times, and began to trim Megan's hair. The girl cried and squealed. She tried to resist, but soon her scalp was bare. He pulled a small tube from his jeans pocket. He ineptly smeared the lipstick over her lips and cheeks so that the girl's face resembled the porcelain mask worn by the mysterious kidnapper. Suddenly, the creature turned around abruptly, as if it had heard something. From its squatting position, it stood up on both feet and walked away. Meanwhile, the trio began to despair. "There's no point," Khan said meekly. All night, they combed the woods, but Megan was still nowhere to be found. Is this a church?" asked Trinity rhetorically, seeing the ruins of what had once been a place of worship. In the middle of the woods, the plastered building stood majestically amongst the trees, creating a stark contrast to the omnipresent forest that surrounded the building like a royal guard protecting its monarch. Something was wrong. Creepy. Trinity, William, and Michael silently approached the mold-covered wooden door. "Let's check it out, shall we?" Michael didn't even wait for an answer and went straight inside. Their lanterns illuminated a crimson, moth-eaten carpet, beside which stood amber pews. At the end of the carpet stood a golden altar, a church, like any other, they thought, until they discerned the huge paintings that adorned the walls of the nave. "I remember the paintings. My grandmother used to take me to church services," Trinity explained. "But they definitely didn't have those masks on them." As soon as Trinity finished speaking, both boys realized what was special about those paintings. The faces of all the saints were covered by white porcelain masks. Hearing human voices in the distance, Megan screamed as loudly as the gag in her mouth would allow. She let out a wild, guttural scream, hoping that her desperate pleas for help would be heard by someone, anyone at all. "Can you hear that?" asked Michael to the others, not expecting her screams to be heard. Asked Michael to the others, not expecting an answer. Asked Michael to the others, not expecting an answer. He immediately ran over to a rusty metal hatch he noticed in the corner of the room. He opened it. Stone steps appeared before his eyes. Without a second's hesitation, he climbed inside. Trinity looked at Ken. Uncertainly, he only shrugged, and she followed Michael. Ken had already crossed the threshold of the house when he noticed movement. He slowly turned around and saw her right behind him. "I'll make you beautiful." Michael jumped down from the last step and scrutinized the dungeon with his flashlight. The room was empty, smelling musty and crawling with rodents fleeing the light. In the corner of the basement, he found a workbench of some sort, and next to it, "Megan?" asked Michael uncertainly. The bald woman, in ropes, with ugly makeup on her face, only answered with an unintelligible scream into a rag stuffed in her mouth. Michael and Trinity slowly released Megan from the ropes. "We have to leave before it comes back," whispered Megan as soon as Michael untied the piece of cloth. "Where did Ken go?" Trinity asked. "Shit," Michael muttered and rushed up the stairs. It was too late. Ken's dead body lay on the floor, his eyes staring absent-mindedly at the floor. He lay limply on the tiled floor, the scissors stuck between his shoulder blades. "Shit, shit, shit," Michael shouted. "It's not true." Tears came to his eyes. He wanted to scream, to curse. The girls burst into tears, desperate tears of utter shock. They knew there was no way out. They would only find damnation in this godforsaken, strange place. Trinity sobbed over her dead friend until Trinity noticed a figure standing at the entrance. "I will make you all beautiful," the masked stranger said in his disgusted, almost childlike tone. The trio, Megan and Michael, panicked and instinctively rushed to the windows on the other side of the church, with terror in their eyes. Michael jumped out through the broken window, followed by Megan and... "No!" Trinity screamed, jumping over the windowsill. She tried to stand up, but instead hissed like captured prey. "I think I broke my leg," she sobbed. The creature in the porcelain mask approached the window. Michael and Megan looked at each other. They didn't need to say a word, and they both knew it was too late. They were running away. "Where the hell are you going? Help me, please, please, help me," gasped Trinity in desperation. Michael and Megan ignored the screams echoing through the forest and kept running until the screams suddenly stopped. They ran as fast as they could. They made their way through the endless thick fog, occasionally interrupted by skinny trees. They stopped in a clearing. The trees were no longer growing, and a wide plain stretched out before them. Megan and Michael stopped in squeamish amazement. This is hell," Michael whispered. In the clearing, as far as the eye could see, were crosses, large wooden crosses, and on them were bodies, each naked, hairless. Each lifeless, crucified corpse had its lips and cheeks painted with red paint. "What? Why?" stammered Mikhail, never for a second taking his eyes off the gruesome sight. He was in such a trance that he didn't even notice the white porcelain mask slowly creeping up behind him. Driven by pure instinct, Megan grabbed a large rock she found on the ground and hurled it with all her might. The creature collapsed to the ground. She cautiously approached the mysterious kidnapper, examined him, the masked killer who had killed her two friends only minutes ago. He lay motionless, as if all strength had left him. Curiosity got the better of Megan, and she removed the unusual mask. Underneath it was an ordinary face, a man in his 30s, as she took the mask in her hands. She felt a tantalizing warmth that awakened a supernatural desire in her. She put the mask on. Suddenly, Megan realized everything. All the pieces of the puzzle came together, and she finally realized that it all made sense to her. She realized what beauty was. She realized, "What kind of pig could create something so horrible?" asked Michael, still oblivious to his surroundings and shaking with unconcealed horror. Megan walked over to him and stood beside him, silent for a moment. "Don't you see how beautiful they are? I'm gonna make you..."